Hey, what's up? This is Nick from Motorcycle.com, and we just got done riding the brand new 2025 Moto Guzzi V7. Now, this is a historic namesake for the brand, and actually it came back into the lineup in about 2008, and it's been lovingly refreshed numerous times since then. But what we're talking about here is an expansion upon the 2021 model that was updated with some engine refreshes and chassis refreshes. That were pretty significant. And we're seeing another step forward in that direction. Now, it's part of a 3-bike lineup, and what you see before me is what I actually spent some time on today, which is the Sport model. So it's a pretty big step up for the V7 overall because it really pushes this bike in a not conventionally sporty way, but a, let's say, heritage sporty way. And something that definitely falls within the concept and ranks of what we understand Moto Guzzi to be. So first things first, let's talk about the 853cc 90-degree transverse V-twin engine. Now I understand it's not a true transverse engine in terms of engineering speak because of the crankshaft orientation, but that's what Moto Guzzi has been calling it since it debuted back in the 60s. Anyway, they call it a transverse. For us, let's call it a V-twin. Now, you're looking at about 67 horsepower, 58 foot-pounds of torque, which is a bit of a step up from before, about 4% increase. And that really comes from a handful of little tweaks. On the interior, if we go inside these heads, we're looking at updated piston cooling solution. So it uses 2 oil jets instead of just a singular one. We also have an updated fuel map, new exhaust system that uses 3 lambdas instead of just 2 as before, because it has some catalytic assistance now per Euro 5 emissions placement. Also has a much larger airbox, 27% bigger with more direct routing. That's going to explain some of your performance increases. Now, Moto Guzzi cites basically between about 3,500 RPM that you're getting about 90% of the peak torque. Either way, you're getting a lot of the peak torque around that range, and then it carries through up to about that 6,000 RPM range. A little bit above that where it starts tapering off. But your zone for this thing and what gives this thing its character is just the fact that it's a modestly revving engine and you have that nice workable mid-range torque. There's a lot to play with here. And the thing about the V7 and just the transverse 90-degree V-twin engine overall is the fact that it's just very mechanical engine. It's deeply mechanical. It has that old school flavor to it. And really what I've always said about Moto Guzzi is that they ride the way they look. They look old school, and it just translates in how it shifts, how it feels, because it has a shaft drive, things like that. It just, everything about it just has that machine feel to it. It's not super smooth like an Aprilia, which is part of the Moto Guzzi brand. And things of that nature. There are some vibes that come through, and some people that are a little bit more persnickety might knock that sort of thing, but realistically, it's what I dig.
The fact is, a Moto Guzzi is nearly defined by its engine, and every aspect of its design is a conscious decision. That might come as a shock to some, seeing as Aprilia, the same brand building 200 horsepower superbikes and competing in MotoGP, is the sister company to Moto Guzzi. They even share engineers. Aspects like the torque effect from the 90-degree V-twin engine's whirring crank are brand hallmarks, which gently tug the bike to the right when you rev it at stoplights. The sound, the feel, the sensations we get on a Goose all speak to a motorcycle that's deeply unapologetic about its nature and wants riders to learn its idiosyncrasies. Banging a rough downshift will just unsettle the whole thing with a shock through its shaft drive, and instead, it's better to treat the chunky 6-speed transmission and single-plate dry clutch with respect, slipping the lever, rev matching, and blending each of those gear transitions smoothly. It's just part of the ambiance of this whole thing, and whether you like it or not is really going to be up to you. But it's definitely a part of Moto Guzzi.
As much as I love the engine, there's plenty of other things to talk about with the inverted fork that is exclusive to the Sport model. 41mm fork comes with some different triple trees that really stiffen up the front end. You're really getting a lot more stiffness in this chassis overall than compared to previous generation V7s, which I actually had a long-term one a number of years ago. There's a lot of flex in the chassis. This stiffens it up quite a bit. Of course, it's still a street damped motorcycle overall. So if you really start pushing, and the voice of Valentino Rossi that I did poorly. The reality is that, look, it's a street bike and it's just a standard motorcycle. If you guys want comparisons, looking at something like the Triumph Street Twin 900 is probably going to be this thing's direct competitor, and the same criticisms apply to that bike as well.
One of the high points of this happy little standard bike is its whippy handling. That might surprise viewers who are judging it off of its claimed 485-pound wet weight, but a low center of gravity goes a long way in masking that. The V7 Sport tips in eagerly and is a nimble little thing around town or up in the canyons. We touched on how the inverted fork stiffened things up, which definitely pays dividends with composure at any pace, but we do need to give a nod to the new cast aluminum 18-inch front and 17-inch rear wheels that are nearly 4 pounds lighter than what's on the rest of the 2025 V7 models. The point is, it's a fun little bike to scoot around on, and it doesn't require much input from the rider to get on the side of its Michelin rubber. It just isn't afraid to go and scrub those peg feelers either. The V7 Sport features a model-specific seat measuring 30.7 inches in height. That's an approachable number in of itself, but a slim chassis and svelte overall size help make this a great option for shorter statured riders, as they'll have no problem reaching the ground or controls. At 5 foot 10 inches tall, the cockpit flirts with the idea of becoming a bit too cramped for riders my size, and those cresting into the 6 foot range might feel the squeeze. In practice, it offers a neutral riding triangle with controls greeting me at a casual reach. Now, sitting behind those handlebars, we'll notice the updated LCD instrument panel, which now features a fuel gauge for the first time. And while the aesthetic updates to the side panels and other aspects are definitely slick, the dash just feels a bit dated. Analog clocks would be the authentic route, and a modern TFT display would be up to snuff with today's offerings, but the LCD dash, it's just not there for me.
Now, new for the year, we have dual M432 calipers up front. It's actually the first time that the V7's ever rocked dual calipers in the front. We do have an axial master cylinder right here. Can be a bit spongy, but they do work, and you actually get some good feel out of them too, and they'll haul you to a stop. Another big improvement is the fact that you have a 6-axis IMU, so that gives you corner and ABS adjustable traction control and 3 ride modes with this ride-by-wire throttle. Now, the chassis is pretty much the same. You still have that steel, tubular steel cradle frame, preload adjustable shocks in the rear. Now, your only adjustments are preload on the front rear, no damping. I personally would like to see some more rebound adjustment, things like that, just to give you a little bit more control. But to me, nuts and bolts isn't really what the V7 is about. Bikes like the V7 are about character, charm, sort of the intangibles that we think about motorcycling. And for me, you can measure all the parts objectively, and you might want to change things here and there, or you might have criticisms. But at the end of the day, this thing just has a charisma that it's kind of inescapable. And that's why I've really fallen in love with the V7s in the past. And this one speaks to me just in the sense that it's fixed a handful of little chassis issues that I think improve it and just improve that breed without really forgetting what this thing is about. Because at the end of the day, it's just a standard motorcycle. No frills, simplistic, air-cooled engine, which is becoming a rarity within the motorcycling community as a whole. Because when we think about Harley-Davidson 883, that's gone. Triumph is all water-cooled at this point. And really, Royal Enfield and Moto Guzzi are some of the few that are really playing in that pond. Now, for a little bit over $10,000, this is what you're looking at with the 2025 Moto Guzzi V7 Sport. I'm Nick DeSena with Motorcycle.com. If you guys have any further questions, go ahead and drop them down below. We'll get you some answers. Now, we're in Italy, of course, so that means gelato. And I have plenty of that to eat, so I'm gonna get out of here. Take care.